Peace, peace, IG. Daniel KC1 NCF, tapping in with you all. This live is going to be about how to gain real power, decrease your dependency, and increase your long-term survivability. Meaning, how do you actually acquire power today? What can you do today? What can you begin to do today to acquire real power? What can you do today to decrease your dependency? I didn't say dependency on a specific thing in the title because I'm not talking about any one thing in specific. You don't want to have to be dependent on anyone or anything outside of yourself as much as you can be. There's always going to be some degree of dependency that a person has. We're going to get into that. But increase your long-term survivability. All right, that's what we're going to be talking about. So before we begin, I want to thank everybody that's tapping in and ask you to please invite somebody else to watch this live. Tag a few more people. I'm going to wait until more people get on here in order to begin, because I want to talk to an audience. I don't want to talk to myself today. I want some audience engagement and some interaction so that we can start a dialogue, so we can start a conversation. So if you have questions already, prepare them. I might invite people on to go live or just have you put your questions in the question box. But do me a favor and tag at least 3 people, or hit that paper airplane symbol at the bottom of your screen and share this to some people's inboxes. Let them know this is a talk that they might want to get involved in. You know, they might be able to learn something. It might spark something in their minds. It might be somebody that you're considering inviting into your circle for survival and preparedness. And if you haven't had that conversation yet, and maybe you didn't know how to introduce it to them, this might be a good way to start. You know, just invite them to this live and let them hear about it, and then afterwards y'all talk about what you heard, and devise a way to get into survival and preparedness together. But again, the topic today is how to gain real power, decrease your dependency, and increase your long-term survivability. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes before I actually go into the topic, just to give a few more people time to actually get on the live. I hope you all will chill with me for this one. You know, hang out a little bit. It's Sunday. Some people still do work on Sundays. Absolutely. Me personally, I work every single day, so I understand that, family. Feel free if you need to get off to work or get something done around the house. I understand that. But if you're doing something where you can, put your headphones on and listen, let me know. Or don't have to let me know, but just hang around. Good evening. Thanks, Sister Marissa, for tapping in with me. But yeah, share this live out, family. So again, now we're talking about power. We're talking about how to gain real power. So what is power? Power is your ability to influence, your ability to manipulate yourself and your environment, your ability to impose your will on yourself and the environment around you, the people in your environment. Now, power can be used for good, power can be used for evil. Me personally, I would advise anyone that I deal with and anyone listening to the sound of my voice now or at a later time to use your power for good. Use your power to impact yourself, your environment, and the people in it in a positive way, in a way that leaves everybody in the environment having learned something, gained a new skill, knowledge, or something to that effect. I would never advise somebody to do anything negative or that has a negative impact on someone else's survival or ability to just live their life in peace. But power is, I have a knowledge, I have an understanding, I have a resource and the ability to apply that resource to myself and my environment to affect change. A lot of people have knowledge but no understanding of how to use their knowledge to actually affect change in their lives. There's no power there. See, the knowledge is potential power. The application of knowledge is applied power. That is power in action. And that's what we're talking about, how to gain both. We want to gain potential power, that when the time comes, we're able to turn that potential power into active power and actually affect ourselves and our environments and the people in it for positive change in our lives and those around us. So decrease your dependency and increase your long-term survivability. That part of the title and is key to the gaining power aspect, because it's hard to gain power in any sphere of influence in any way when you're dependent upon someone else or something else in order for you to be able to make a move, a decision, or gain something, right? Now, as human beings, we are dependent beings, meaning we depend on our environment. We depend on air, oxygen. We depend on water. We depend on food, whether that food is grown out of the ground or raised like cattle or other livestock. There's a dependency there, right? So again, I like to be clear with what I'm saying. When we talk about dependency, I don't mean, you got to be this super independent person that you get absolutely nothing from nobody anywhere at any point in time, and everything you have is right there with you, and you just don't need anyone or anything. That's just absurd. That's not what we're talking about. So you want to decrease dependency. You can't eliminate it, right? And in order to affect your long-term survivability. And let's get into some of these things that we can decrease our dependability on. Right now, can't really put a number on it, but I'm willing to say, at least in America, 90+% of the entire population is dependent on store-bought processed foods. It doesn't matter if the only thing you go to the store for is maybe just Pop-Tarts and a gallon of milk, and maybe you resource your stuff from somewhere else. I don't know, right? Because everything's to different degrees, but 90+% of this population is dependent on store-bought processed foods. Why is this an important topic? Because as you're dealing with survival and preparedness, and you're dealing with being able to increase your power, we're not talking about the power to do because anything that, again, you can manipulate is a power. I might have the power to eat nachos, right? I have the power to go make something, as a snack, something I don't really need. We're talking about things that actually matter here. So how does this play into the overall topic? Well, you have to look at, in a situation, a circumstance where you're forced to actually take care of yourself, meaning you're not going to be able to depend on industry, where you're not going to be able to depend on the infrastructures that are set by either the private sector or the government sector of the population, when you're unable to depend on even your local community resources that you get from your city or your state, free resources that they give you, like library cards and free tickets to the museum or the zoo or something like that. There's all kind of free perks and stuff that you get living in society. You have to be able to decrease your dependency on anything that you currently depend on, that if it was taken away from you, you would suffer to any degree. I don't care how big or how small. If someone taking something away from you that they're giving you, so like you're used to getting something that you use in your daily life or regularly in life, and you're used to getting that thing from a source, that if that source stopped giving it to you, it would impact your ability to take care of yourself and your family and to actually exercise your will, then you need to decrease your dependency on that. And food is going to be, food and water, but we'll separate the two for a second. But food and water are going to be your biggest thing, right? But food specifically, again, we rely on these store-bought processed foods. And most of the reason is because most of the population lives in crowded cities. We live in municipalities and metropolitans and areas where, you don't have a lot of room for farming to the scale that you would be able to sustain your household, your family, on just the food you grow. And that means producing it currently in the moment, but also having things stockpiled. For instance, there are people who live in places in the Midwest where they can grow year-round, and down south where they can grow year-round, and they can constantly produce food actively on their farm and feed their families. But then you have people who live, like for me, on the East Coast, where in some Midwest places where it snows, and you can't produce year-round unless you have some kind of they make certain type of greenhouses that you can produce year-round, but that takes a lot of money. You have to have your own land to do that, right? But you can't produce in the city of Boston food year-round growing out of the ground in an urban garden. First of all, there's not enough space in inner city Boston to have a farm big enough to produce all my family's needs, especially if they eat meat, right? That's a whole nother thing, because now you're talking about grazing land and other land for animals, right? but there's not enough space. But then when the winter time comes, you have to have produced enough to hold you over on that time period, right? So we have grocery stores, supermarkets, regular markets. Not all markets are Stop and Shop size, or America's Food Basket size, or Shaw's, or Kroger's, or Piggly Wiggly, and these other types of supermarkets around the country. There are some very small markets that sell things more intimate to whatever community that it's in. But if that's where you get all of your food from, when things hit the fan and for some reason you wake up and the grocery stores are not open, you will feel it almost instantly. You might not get hungry instantly at the sight of walking up to the grocery store and it's 3 hours after the time it was supposed to open and it's not open. You might not feel the hunger pangs right away. You might not feel the effects of oncoming starvation or lack of nutrients or whatever have you, right? Like, we get a lot of nutrients from that food anyways. But you will feel some kind of emotional pain. There will be some kind of mental effect that it's going to have on you that day you wake up and the grocery stores are not open and you get all your food from a grocery store or any other type of market, and it's not from your own local farm. It's not from your own, container garden. It's not from the basil you might grow on your kitchen counter in your nice kitchen. They got some real sunny windows and all their south facing windows. People got that kind of thing, right? And they have something that they can provide for themselves. But a lot of us do not have any of those options, or not options, but we don't have any of that working for us, whether we have the option or not. So that day, you're going to feel powerless, right? Because this is what we're getting into, how to gain real power. You're going to feel real powerless to wake up and walk to a grocery store. The grocery store is not open and you have yourself to feed, a spouse to feed, children to feed, and you do not know where to get that food from. So how do we decrease our dependency on these things? First of all is to get the knowledge. First, the knowledge of, okay, well, I live in the inner city. I don't own any farmland. You might not yet have access to a community garden. So that's the first thing. If I don't have farmland or a big backyard, how can I get access to a community garden so that I can get a plot and grow some of the things that will grow in my area, that are staples in my household? I'm not going to be growing mushrooms if I don't eat mushrooms. I'm not going to grow eggplant if I don't eat eggplant. I'm not going to be growing zucchini or squash if I don't eat those things, right? I want to grow things that I eat. Maybe I like tomatoes. Maybe I like a lot of peppers and onions. That's what I'm going to grow. And if I'm capable of growing it in that environment, that's what I'm going to grow. But if you have backyard space, determine how much of your yard are you willing to convert to growing food. You're going to have to learn how to take and test the soil or have it tested, but we want to try to do so many things on our own. So figure out a way to test the soil or have it tested to figure out whether it's okay. Because I know in a lot of cities, especially like in Boston, where there were a lot of warehouses and factories, where a big chunk of Boston is actually a landfill. Boston is not the best place to just go and plant something in the ground. It's just not. There's a lot of toxic earth around it. So, but you have to know these kind of things, and it's not something that just happens overnight. Y'all part of me? I'm dead smack in the middle of the hood. I had dirt bikes and stuff all day, police sirens and stuff. Y'all hear that kind of stuff in my background. There's no one after me. I'm perfectly fine. So that's number one, determining, what space do you have to grow. If you don't have access to a backyard or community garden, what about inside of your home? What kind of things can you grow in a container in your home? Tomatoes, beans. While you might not be able to produce a lot of beans in the space in your house, it is possible. Peppers, onions, garlic. You can grow spinach. You can grow quite a number of things. I should have brought a list. I have a list of that, but that's a little bit more in detail. I didn't plan on going through the list of food, but just to talk about it in general. But you have to determine, okay, well, there's always has to be the question in your mind, well, what's possible? What might happen where I have to think this way? Well, there are many things that can happen. But once you determine, okay, well, I want to prepare myself in the event that XYZ takes place, where am I going to grow food at? Where am I going to store this food? How am I going to store this food, right? So the first thing is decrease your dependency on store-bought processed foods. And I said store-bought processed because, until you're able to produce your own produce from the ground or in a container in your house, you still have to purchase food. But what you want to decrease your dependency on as far as store-bought food is that processed food. You want to buy from the produce section, buy peppers and onions and garlic whole, buy tomatoes, buy things that you can actually preserve, whether it's through dehydration, freezing, or through canning or pressure canning and water bath canning the food. Just figure those things out while you're simultaneously working out your plan for growing in your home, in your backyard, in a community garden, or acquiring some kind of farmland or plot of land to start your own community garden where you might give other people plots. But decrease your dependency on store-bought processed foods. Begin to figure out how you're going to grow your food, how you're going to store that food again through the canning method. Peace, Sister V, how you doing today? Thank you for tapping in with me. I know long time no see. I gotta hop on one of your lives. But do me a favor, family, again, share this out with somebody you think would benefit from this conversation. Feel free to ask me questions about anything that I'm saying or something that I'm not mentioning. And if you would like to go live and ask your questions live, I'm definitely down for that. I think it would help me. It'd help me a little bit because I do kind of wing these things. I don't typically use notes because I like to come off the top of my head and speak what's coming from my heart and in my mind. And it's good for me to learn how to convey the messages that I want to get over to you. Other times I use notes, yeah. Sometimes I might use a list of points, but I don't, I try not to read off word for word things, right? So come on and ask me questions. I actually work better on a dialogue. When people ask me questions, we can go in all day. So decrease your dependency on store-bought processed foods, and then overall, after you've gotten things in place, decrease your dependency on store-bought foods. And what is this going to accomplish? Right now, a person that does not have access to their own canned foods, like stuff that they canned in glass jars, a person who does not have food they can pick out of their garden or the container in their house, if the grocery stores, if something happened tomorrow, we see what happened with the meatpacking plant with the cyber attack. We see what's happening with COVID and a shortage of food and farmers throwing things around, and what's happening with the supply chain issues and their ability to get things here and there. We see what's happening in supermarkets with prices are skyrocketing. Sometimes they'll shoot up and come back down, but we see an unhealthy fluctuation. I mean, it's going up and then come down a little bit. It's never going back down to its original price for most things. And it's going to be a trend we're going to see to the point where it's normal for us to see things double what they were before the pandemic. And you're just going to get used to it, and it's going to be like that frog boiling a pot, where you don't realize it until it's too late and you're somebody's dinner. Or in this case where, you simply are out of luck and out of time. So you need to begin to figure out how to decrease your dependency again on store-bought foods. But that person, again, that's going to wake up and see that, they're going to shift their dependency from the supermarkets, and initially there's going to be a cry for help, to politicians or to some other local leadership. Well, we need this, we need that in our community because, we're seeing a decline. How come there's no system set up for this? And how come there was no warning? And all these cries people are going to have. And then they're going to start turning to the people who were prepared, people who they seen in those community gardens, people who they seen talking about and dealing with survival preparedness on some kind of level. And when they are turned down, and many of them are going to be turned down, because I'm just going to hint you to something real quick. I'm going to hint you to something. Peace. Everybody's tapping in. Trevor in the building. Sister V's in the building. Brother D'Artagnan's in the building. We got M Official. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Pardon me if I jack that one up. One Bella in the building. We got Blessed B&B, Brother Luino in the building. We got Q Minus and Sister Marissa in the building, and Queen Trinace in the building. I want to thank everybody for tapping in. Please share this out if you have the ability to do so. I think join in, ask questions in the question section, or request to go live. I might not bring it right away, but I do want to bring some people on to go live and ask me direct questions about survival. It doesn't have to be about the topic today. You can ask me about something completely unrelated to what we're talking about, and I'll tie it in because it's all tied into one another, right? So let's get back to it though. You're going to shift your dependency from the grocery store to people who are already prepared. And this is the reality I said a second ago I was going to give to you all. The guy who's preparing and saving up and stocking up food, water, emergency supplies for his household and his family is not stocking up enough for you. Point blank period. He's having a tough enough time stocking up that food and those resources for his wife and his children, for her children, or for themselves, to be giving you what they have rationed for their families. The person who's getting in this mindset is thinking rations. They're thinking long term. It's not just this. You can't plan for 3 days. Now, we always talk about having a minimum. You hear about go bags, and when they talk about go bags, they always mention 3 days. So there's this 3-day mindset people have in their head that you need to get rid of. That's a minimum for go bag, for a bag that's supposed to get you from point A to point B in some kind of disaster situation. Get that out of your mind. That's a bare minimum, and that's literally to get from point A to point B. Point B is supposed to be a place that you have predetermined where there should be resources on the other side. 3 days worth of food, 3 days worth of water is not enough for anybody to survive. That's, again, for point A to point B. Get that straight. I don't want to misdirect anybody when we talk about that 3-day thing. And when we're talking about having a 90-day supply of food, a 90-day supply of water, we're thinking about having enough food and water to sustain you and the people in your household long enough for you to implement systems, strategies, knowledge, and wisdom to make what you need to get you past that 90 days. Meaning, hits the fan tomorrow, I have 90 days worth of water, food, supplies, so that during that 90 days, I'm not sitting on my butt waiting for somebody to come give me something. During that 90 days, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to get water to add on to the 90 days? So that when that 90 days comes, we have a place to get water. We have a way to boil that water. We have a way to clean that, to distill that water. We have a way to purify that water to take us beyond that 90 days. That 90-day supply is a cushion. It's a cushion so that you're not stressed. It's a cushion so that you're not pulling your hair out. What am I going to do? Because I have nothing right here and there. It's going to allow you to have energy, resources, and to be able to think with a clear mind on how to get past the 90 days. Because we're not talking about just hurricanes and tornadoes. It might be a temporary thing. For some people, will tell you that lived in areas like Hurricane Katrina that were displaced out of the state, out of the city, and have not recovered years later. Years later. We're talking about places like down in Louisiana. It's a city that they're getting hit basically every year, and it's the worst city. That's the compounded natural disasters. Like, it's completely unrecovered. Not Benton Harbor. That's in Michigan. I'm forgetting the name of the city. When it comes back to me, I'll say it. But you want to get that out of your mindset. That 90 days is a cushion. And it's an extremely important cushion that you do need to have. Because again, if you have seed, if you have the ability to farm, and you're learning that now like you should be, you put a plant in the ground, you're not reaping that tomorrow. So what are you eating until you're able to reap that which you sowed? What are you drinking until you're able to set up a filtration system, until you're able to set up or dig a well on your land, until you're able to actually start reproducing the resources? See, these resources will run out. If I have 90 days worth of food and water in my home, and other supplies, once 90 days passes, it's gone. What do you do beyond that point if said infrastructures do not come back online, if you will? Keep that in mind as we talk about these things. But let's shift to water. Same thing. You have to decrease your dependency on water, specifically from the tap. That's even to your shower or your bath. You need to learn how to cleanse yourself, how to bathe yourself without your convenient bathroom or the shower or the tub. You have to prepare yourself for a day where it's going to be more dangerous to take a shower because you're in a situation like Flint, Michigan, where they were being harmed not just by the drinking of the water, by washing their clothes in the water, by taking showers in the water. It was just as toxic as drinking the water. How do you live in that type of situation? Now, that's not an easy one to deal with. It would be better to find a river, which is not the cleanest source, but there might be a river that might be at some point in time cleaner to take a bath in than it would be to actually take a bath in your own tub or shower in your own shower. That's just a reality that many people on this planet actually deal with, believe it or not, because we've got so comfortable and the necessities of life and the creature comforts that the infrastructure has allowed us to operate under, break that out of your mind. Anything that you've seen happen to these third world countries can visit us, and more than likely will visit us. Every nation has a rise, every nation has a fall. But decrease your your dependency on that tap water, and then again, more specifically, the fact that they treat it. See, that's where the comfortability comes from, is us assuming that there's a plant, there's a central source, the Water and Sewer Commission or whatever it is in your city, that there's a point that water travels through, and they're putting fluoride, they're putting other chemicals, and there are filtration systems that is going through, that are taking some things out and they're adding things to the water to make it so that you can ingest that water or take a bath in that water. And if you do the research and you look it up, most of the water we drink, most of the water we bathe in, actually, many of the chemicals and stuff that you'll find in them are far, the parts per million that is actually in the water are far above what the FDA and other agencies says is safe for human consumption. Actual facts. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the system where you can get that, but you look up in your local city or whatever, your water treatment plants and all that stuff, and that information is there. You can likely find that links to it, or find it somewhere on the FDA's website. But look that kind of thing up and really start thinking about, okay, well, if what you're saying is even currently right now my tap water is not safe for me to drink, it's not really safe for me to take a shower or a soak in a bathtub full of this water, because it is poisoned, even though you can ingest it and not die immediately, not get overly sick, because our immune systems have gotten to the point where we're able to process out a lot of this stuff. It does not mean that it's not having a negative effect on your body, because it definitely is. That's a good point to think about, the fluoride and bleach tainted water. It is fluoride and bleach tainted water. So what is it that you can do to decrease your dependency on that? Now, you may take the tap water and treat it yourself. There are things you can do to treat your own tap water, or to filter your own tap water, to distill your tap water in order to make it potable or ingestible, or consumable, because you don't only ingest it through drinking, and you shower in it, you bathe in it, you might wash your clothes in it, you might wash your dishes in it. How do you do that? There's distillation, which is basically taking water and bringing water to the point where it creates steam or boils it. As long as it steams, and it's going to steam slower at the lower levels, but if you can bring it to a rapid boil and funnel the water through a tube where the steam will condense back into droplets on the other side, it is going to leave in the first pot a lot of the sediment, and all of the sediment, but a lot of the chemicals and other particulates that might be in the water that are not as light as steam. The steam will rise above it, condense, make condensation, which is rain, or well, not rain, it's water droplets. Steam is water vapor or gas. Condensation is water droplets in the form of liquid, and then precipitation is just the process of the water falling down, but it will precipitate onto the other container to gather back as water. When you distill water, there are still some things that will travel over, but not all of them, and it will make the water a lot safer. There's filtration, which is setting up a system where you might take things like sand, small gravel rock, coal, some other type of fabric or material, or foam or microfoam or something like that, that is still porous, that will take the heavy sediment out, color and taste out of the water to make it more palatable. And then some people combine these systems where they will take and filter water first, and then take the filtered water and then distill that water to further clean it. Now, it depends on where you're getting the water from and what's wrong with it, or what you may think is wrong with the water for why you might take that approach. But again, acid is another part. There's treating the water with iodine tablets, or with bleach, a drop of bleach to a certain amount of water. And then there are other types of tablets. They use germicidal tablets to clean the water. Now, if you were to use all those, the first thing you would do is you would get the water and you would treat the water. with something that will kill bacteria and other protozoa and stuff in the water and eliminate those things, right? Just straight off kill those things, which is not going to take care of the sediment and the color of the water, and may even add, it's not going to take care of the taste and palatability of the water. But then after that, you take that water and you filter it now. And after the filter, you distill that water. So now this is a system you would set up to get you over that 90 days. You get 90 days worth of water stocked up in your home, and then you're setting up a system that now, because this is a process, treating the water, filtering the water, and distilling the water takes time. Even just distilling the water, you're going to talk about boiling and heating the water. You have to wait for that water to cool to use it. So you need days worth of time to replenish what you're using up. And that's what that 90-day cushion is for, as far as that's concerned. When it comes to the food, is having enough food to eat, that while you planted that stuff in your home, in your backyard, in your community garden, guess what? You're eating something while that's growing, and what you grow will replace what you eaten out of your storage, and then you use that cycle. Now, just to make sure you understand, you have to grow quite a lot of food in order to make enough to eat and can up or preserve for a later time. So the amount of food you would have to grow in order to replace a 90-day supply of food is actually more than what that 90-day supply of food initially was. Keep that in mind. Another thing I want to draw back to real quick as it goes to survival and preparedness, and something that I don't really hear no one talking about in the community when it comes to, you know, your community gardens and even in your backyard garden, is that when things hit the fan, it's actually going to be a lot smarter to have indoor container gardens, or at least somewhere where your home is far away from other people, not in the inner city. I'm speaking mostly to people in the inner city. Either you have a really big gate and people can't really see what's happening, not gate chain link. I'm talking about a gate that's blocking view and it's up high, blocking other people's view and they can't see what you're producing. If you have that type of yard or farm space in your community, that's beautiful. But that's going to require a tremendous amount of security, because in the SHTF, it's the fan situation, you're going to have to protect that food, because they're going to have people who want that food. So having it already stored up in your home and having ways to grow food inside of your house where it's easier to maintain and defend is actually a better option for survival and preparedness reasons. Again, most of your community is not thinking about what you're on here to listen to, which means they will come for what you got if you're not prepared to protect it. So even keep that in mind. It's another thing that we don't think about. Yeah, as you could probably tell, you know, I'm more into it. I'm big on the mindset of survival and understanding these things. I do have a question in the question box. What if your soil of where you live is more clay-based than rich? Well, there's a few options you can do. You can figure out if there are ways to amend clay. And well, first of all, what type of clay is it? What percentage of that soil is clay? Can the clay be amended with something to make it the proper environment to grow certain foods? You're not going to be able to grow any kind of food in clay land. I've done landscape for a number of years. There's a sister who lives in a town like 45 minutes away from here, and she wasn't growing food, but she just wanted plants, because she's put an Airbnb on her property. And so we had to figure out what type of plant she wanted to plant. Now she's on the coast, right there. Like you walk outside her crib, and it's literally ocean right there. Like from her door to the ocean was less than 30 feet. And there's a lot of sandy soil, so we had to figure out what kind of plants she wanted for that. So holly bush, different types of pines, hedges, and stuff like that could grow in that type of soil. Hostas and other plants that can tolerate that. So you have to figure out the same kind of thing for your area. Well, what type of plants or food can I grow in this if it's amended? But the real answer to that one is going to probably be raised beds. You're going to want to do a raised bed garden where you're going to build you're going to use wood, treated wood, likely, that you're going to put X amount of feet above the ground depending on what you want to grow. I say the deeper the better, because you might switch between what you want to do. You don't put it low, say, well, this doesn't need much soil, and then you might want to do something later that needs more soil. So I say if you're going to do a raised bed, make it as high as possible, because while something might not need 2 feet worth of soil to grow, it's best to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So raised beds is going to be the best option. You're going to fill that with good silt. You're going to fill that with good either potting soil or outdoor growing soil. You want to amend it with different types of fertilizers or whatever that you might be able to have access to, but be able to maintain. That's the biggest thing. Whatever you choose to use in your garden, make sure that you can maintain that. Make sure that if you're getting your manure or your fertilizer from a source that would collapse with the grid or not be accessed by the grid, and you're relying on that to maintain your garden, and try to start your garden without it. Try to start your garden with things that you're able to do on your own. Start thinking about repurposing your bananas, your eggshells, and other fruits and vegetables to make your own compost, to make your own soil. That's another thing that's tricky if you live in the inner city, because you're talking about producing something, or you're talking about making something that will produce a smell, something that will produce gases that can actually be dangerous. And you're talking about a process that takes 2 years, a year to actually get it to the point where it can be used, but really you need 2 years, because there's a cycle that you have to follow when it comes to making that soil or making that fertilizer and stuff. I used to work for a pH plant and handle the different sulfurs. Yeah, so you should know something about pH balance, because that's going to be a big thing about your soil, dealing with your soil, the pH balance of your soil when it comes to growing different types of fruits and vegetables, because the acidity makes a difference. The acidity versus the alkalinity is going to make a difference in the soil and what you can grow. So I hope that answers your question. But the best thing you're going to do if you live around a lot of clay land and you think about growing outside, think about raised bed gardens, but do the research to see how that clay land may possibly, and I can't say that it will, so I say possibly, can be amended to accommodate certain fruits or vegetables. And if it can't be amended, then you have to go with the raised bed option. But again, when you're thinking long-term survivability, you might want to think about, if you live in the inner city, what can you do actually indoors? But back to the water. That's a system, that 90-day supply of water to buffer you. Set up a filtration system. Have something that you can use to actually treat the water, and then have a way that you can filter the water. Distillation, filtration, and treatment. You have to figure those things out now, because it will be too late when things hit the fan for you to try to put those systems in place. You're going to end up being dependent on somebody who always has it. And I'm going to say it again. The people who are prepping themselves now are not prepping themselves for you. A man stocks up a year's worth of food specifically for his wife and his children, and he has it rationed out and counted out that this will last us a year. For him to give you 1 week's worth of food means that that's 1 week's less food for his family. He's going to have to figure out a way to replace that. She's going to have to figure out a way to replace that. They're going to have to figure out a way to replace that. I advise that when you get into it, you don't go trying to do it for your community as far as what you actually producing yourself and storing up yourself, outside of telling them and showing them how they can do it, to start stocking up things for them until you've reached a minimum that you have in mind that you need to make sustain. I advise you not to do it for nobody else. It's gonna take some time and some energy and some planning to actually get to a year's worth, or to 30 days worth of water and food stored up, non-perishable, meaning you have it and it's there, and if something jumps off 6 months from now, it's still there, right? Water, you might have to rotate that a little bit more often, but you can do something to put 90 days worth of food aside right now, today, or at least begin today, to where if it jumped off 6 months from now, that food is still there. Water, so that's water, right? Cosmetics. We've become extremely dependent on cosmetics, whether it's toothpaste, lotion, mouthwash, soap, hair oils, creams, and other hair treatment things that we're used to, makeup. I think I mentioned deodorant, right? Whatever have you, cosmetics. I thought I wanted to add cosmetics to the list because they are important. You know, there's a couple things I've heard in the prepper community from different people when it comes to certain things dealing with cosmetics, right? And that is, it plays into this gray man theory that they have, or this gray man concept. The gray man concept is basically when you think about whatever environment that you're in or you plan to be in or have to traverse during a situation, meaning your immediate community, right? How do people dress? How do people act? How do people walk and talk in that area, right? If you operate outside of that, then you stick out. The gray man is the one who has learned how to blend into their environment. But then you start off there, but you have to traverse a certain terrain in order to get to area B, which means where you want to end up at the end of the day. The terrain you traverse, there's a certain behavior, there's a certain way that things look, a certain way that things happen, right? Because we're talking about maybe you have to travel 10 miles, maybe 20, maybe 100 miles to get from point A to point B from a disaster zone into a safe zone. How do you go through point A to point B without sticking out like a sore thumb, right? So this gray man theory includes in it, right? And I'm mentioning this because of the cosmetic thing, right? And hygiene type stuff. They say, well, if you're traversing a certain terrain and in a SHTF situation, most people are not prepared. You don't want to be the guy walking around smelling like, soap and smelling good, or everybody's out here stinking and dirty. I don't necessarily agree with that. Wholly, I understand the concept. I know why they say that, and it's true. You don't want to be out here smelling like cherries and strawberries and peppermint while everybody else is out here looking, crazy and smelling crazy. To that I say, okay, yes, I 100% agree. But that doesn't mean you don't got to be clean. What I'm saying is you should still think about soap. How are you going to clean yourself? But it doesn't have to be some super lavendery scented thing. You might want to create a soap that is going to get you clean. Like, there's deodorant and then there's antiperspirant. Antiperspirant, the idea behind that is it's going to keep you, or it's going to, not keep you, it's going to inhibit some degree of perspiration, which is going to decrease the smell. To some degree, it's going to decrease it because a lot of that smell comes from sweat, dried, or whatever, giving off a smell, right? So antiperspirant is going to cut down on that, but it's not going to eliminate it. It is going to help you to keep yourself dry and in a better condition. But deodorant is a deodorizer. They make deodorants that aren't good antiperspirants. They make some that are good antiperspirant deodorants, and it's going to slow the sweat down, and it's not going to eliminate it completely, and it's going to mask some of the smell that comes from the sweat that will escape, and then eventually it deteriorates anyways, and it's going to fight through. So you might want to think about antiperspirants, a really effective antiperspirant, as opposed to a deodorant that is extremely scented. But a good antiperspirant could also have baking soda, to where baking soda masks smell. You have the antiperspirant properties, but it's not going to give off this smell where, dang, well, will you get deodorant? Because if it comes into somebody's mind that you have access to anything, they're going to assume you have access to everything, or they're going to want what it is that you have. So there is a rhyme and a reason to that whole gray man thing when it comes to blending in, where, and a lot of the times the people who are telling you this stuff, just going to be real with you, are, these homesteaders, and these people are middle-aged white men, some younger than middle-aged, some older than middle-aged, but mostly middle-aged white men. They got that caveman mentality anyways. I'm just keeping it real funky. I've been watching these videos. I only come across a few preppers who are of any color at all, and it's a whole nother mindset. I'm gonna just say that. Just keep it real with you. So, toothpaste, same thing. You want to be able to have something to brush it, because this is something that's also going to play into morale. Morale is a huge thing in survival and preparedness. It's okay to have, it's best to have food and water and shelter and all that, but you don't want to have all that, but you're constantly in a funk, if you will, meaning you have it, but it's bare necessity. It's going to help you to survive. When they talk about morale, they're talking about also packing something that has flavor so that it brings a certain amount of morale, meaning, you have your survival foods, but you don't want to be just eating MREs that are disgusting and some nasty stuff that's just going to help you to survive. You want to pack some chocolate. You want to pack some candy, right? Well, candy's probably better. Hard candy that is not going to melt. Something that, after you've eaten your little ration and it's not the most food that you normally used to eating, it's not the best tasting food, you have candy that's going to raise your morale. brushing your teeth, raising, like you get in the morning and you feel sluggish getting out of bed maybe, or some people maybe don't get out of bed sluggish, but you know that waking up is like, here's another day. Tell me you don't always feel some degree better after you take a shower, brush your teeth, and you feel fresh. There's a morale that comes with that, right? So having soap, having deodorant, having toothpaste, having some kind of cosmetic thing that makes you feel, smell, and appear better is going to help you. That is important as well. But I just say decrease your dependency on it, on not the fish on it, but decrease your dependency on buying it. Where's your deodorant come from? The stores are open tomorrow, you're going to be dependent on it somehow. And now I'm not talking about you have to go make your own deodorant and all that kind of stuff, because it's actually going to be a lot easier to produce that than it's going to be to produce food. It's going to be a lot easier to produce soap than it is going to be to produce or continuously get water, because water is going to be extremely hard to get and store in large amounts. That, you know, when you talk about showering and cooking, water and drinking water is going to go fast. Bathing, cooking, cleaning, drinking, water, laundry, like that's going to, it takes a lot of water. It's going to be hard to get water and maintain a large surplus of water without having a way of, with a well where you're constantly pumping to replenish what you have stored and treated. Because again, if you have a way to get water a river, you have to take it through processes that take time in rotating that, right? So water is another story. But stuff like deodorant, maybe you go get you a year's worth of deodorant, get you a year's worth of soap, get you a year's worth of lotion, get you a year worth of hair care products, and have that set aside. But start working on how you're going to produce it. And this is where we're going to get into getting things like buying and stocking up on peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, stock up on isopropyl alcohol, stock up on essential oils, stock up on castile soap, stock up on aloe, stock up on baking soda, stock up on apple cider vinegar and distilled vinegar, stock up on anything that is the basics of these cosmetic products. Just those things I named right there alone will eliminate deodorant. You have deodorant in that. There's mouthwash in what I just named. There are hair care products in what I just named. There's something that came on and went out my mind just as quickly to add to that list. I'll come back to me. But I named toothpaste is in that list. Deodorant's in that list. Petroleum jelly. You can add that on there. Vaseline if you want. There are many things you can use with Vaseline. And that adds other stuff to the list, like ointments and things that you can use. The baking soda. But just think about it. A lot of that toothpaste, deodorant, mouthwash, diaper rash ointment, hair creams, hand washing soap, dish detergent, cleaners, you can make with those things that I just named. I should have a list in front of me of that, but there's like 10 items that you could buy now and then buy in bulk that is cheap, that will replace or have you to be able to manufacture your own cosmetics over time. But buy a year's worth of these other things that's already pre-made, because you can do that reasonably easily, right? A year's worth of deodorant, you buy a thing of deodorant, you should be able to buy, a stick of deodorant. You buy the green one that's like this. Like for me, it's like this big, 5 inches tall. There's no reason why that won't last me, 20 to 30 days, unless I'm taking 5 showers a day. You think 20 to 30 days, I don't have to buy that many to last me a year. It's not like buying a year's worth of food. It's not like storing up a year's worth of water. And once you buy it, you don't have to get it again. It's deodorant just for what you have it for. And that's a pretty long while to not have to worry about deodorant, but have time to get the products that you can use to learn how to make the deodorant. And when you learn how to make the deodorant, you're also making tools that you can barter with. When you learn how to make the toothpaste from scratch, you're making things that you can barter. You have a skill that you can barter with, a skill that can be sold, that's up here, it's renewable. Once you have the knowledge of how to do these things, that's a renewable resource. It's not getting rid of it unless you have some kind of blunt force trauma to the head or something that knocks your memory out. That's a resource that no one can take away from you. No one even knows you has it until you let them know for them to take it away from you. You can always trade that. You can always provide it. You ever see the movie where they won't kill a person simply because they want what's in their mind? That's real. There are people who seek your life, but will not take your life because you have knowledge that they want or need. Knowledge is power. That actually should have been number one on my list, which is decrease your dependency on someone else's knowledge by gaining the knowledge on your own. You know, you're dependent on this person to grow the food. Learn how to grow it yourself. You're dependent on this person to learn how to distill the water. Learn how to distill it yourself. You're dependent on this person to know how to sew your clothes. Learn how to sew your clothes yourself. But so cosmetics is definitely another thing you want to decrease dependency on, because cosmetics is going to help you to raise morale. It's going to keep you feeling fresh and in a better position in this post-class world. Let me just look at these comments real quick. Thank you to everybody who's tapping in. Please tag somebody, invite somebody else into this live. But ask your questions. If you do want to go live with me, I will pull you on live, ask your questions live. Let's get into a dialogue about this. I'm down for that. I'm here for that. Good things to think about, but there's a question here. And I can post these questions. I can pin the questions, I mean. What would be a good replacement for toilet paper? Ooh, that's a big one. Now, what I would say is this. When it comes to toilet paper, people call people crazy for hoarding, for panic buying, as they say, toilet paper. I don't see nothing wrong. Listen, I went out and got me some toilet paper too to last me some time. Forget that. I haven't bought toilet paper in a while. I still haven't bought. It's been more than a year. I haven't bought toilet paper in a while. There's nothing wrong with that. Stock up on that. Get you at least a year's worth of toilet paper. Why not? Forget what other people say. Get it. A good replacement for toilet paper is a tricky one. The first thing I'm going to default to is the same thing that people did back in the day for their babies, but it was cloth diapers. Maybe you buy some cloth that you designate as toilet paper, but this is going to bring in that you're going to have a way to clean this stuff. You're going to have to have a way to dispose of the soil from it, right? Because if you think about it, parents that use reusable diapers, like literally, children piss and poop in them diapers, and they clean them and sanitize them to the point where they could put that back onto the body of the child. So you could realistically make that type of cloth that is easy to clean. It's not going to, hold the bacteria for too long. This is something I have not developed for my own system necessarily yet. I do have what I'm planning for my family as far as, that area, but it's not necessarily, what I'm planning is not a replacement for toilet paper, because I want to answer that specific question. So to replace toilet paper, think about the cloth diapers. You could have cloth that is literally just, like we have a closet and we have a place in the home and this is just for that, and your family has that and your family knows where it's at and they use it and it's that, right? It's an interesting question. Other than that, you've heard people say using leaves and stuff like that. You would have to know what kind of leaf you're using. The leaf would have to be strong enough that it's not going to break, right? And there might even be leaves that might even have medicinal purpose that you could use, right? You could think about the bidet type of thing where you don't use toilet paper and you just use running water. But then again, with the bidet, the question is, the water's not running. Well, the same way women have dishes and stuff like that, you might have a squirt bottle dedicated to that you use to literally clean yourself off with. It might sound disgusting, but that's real. But that's a very good question. What would you use to replace toilet paper? Personally, what I would do, I would go with the bidet option, and the combination of that and the reusable cloths, like a reusable diaper. And what I would say is that I would try to remove as much of it with flowing water as possible, of the waste or whatever with flowing water, and then use the cloth or whatever to get whatever the flowing water would not get, so that it's a minimum amount on that cloth that you have to clean out. Now again, you have to have bleach. You want to have bite games out here. You want to have another type of cleaning solution ready, that after you use this, it immediately goes into a cleaning solution, so it doesn't have time to embed itself into that cloth, and you're able to remove it from that source and kill whatever bacteria is in there. And then from that initial place, another place for it to actually be washed. So there's an initial one where you're going to kill it, disintegrate the bio waste, the biohazardous waste, and then transfer it to a place where it's going to be cleaned. And you want to keep that separate from your other things like your regular clothes that you're going to wear. But that is definitely an option because toilet paper is not that old. People have not been using toilet paper for hundreds of years. Like, it's not that old. There are a lot of things that we use now and use often that are hundreds of years old. Toilet paper is not one of them. So I would even look up that. Look up, you know, what was people doing before toilet paper. Like, look at, I've never actually researched that specifically, like that question, typing that in, looking that up specifically, but I have researched the question specifically, you know, waste removal in a post-collapse world. I've looked at it from that perspective, waste removal and management. So that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that question. Is that I'm going to answer that question better on another live just because you asked it. Thank you. Please, family, please tap in, ask your questions. Oh shoot, we got Jewels in the building. How we doing, brother Jewels? That's my nephew there. Lisa's in the building. Thank you for tapping in. Share this out with somebody. So cosmetics. Again, let me just wrap that one up. Decrease your dependency on store-bought cosmetics. And let me give another point to decreasing dependency. When we talk about that, if you go and you get store-bought food, you're going to get a year's worth of canned food out of the store, a year's worth of non-perishable food out of the store, shelf-stable food out of the store, and you put it in your home. When things hit the fan, you already have it. So at that moment, you're not actually dependent on the store. What I'm talking about is when things hit the fan and you don't have anything to store it and you're dependent on going to the grocery store to get it. So buying things now that you can afford to buy and stock up is decreasing dependency and increasing your long-term survivability. So that's number one with the cosmetics. Get a year's worth of your cosmetic stuff put aside. And then learn how to take baking soda, peroxide, isopropyl alcohol of 90% or more if you can get it, aloe vera juice or straight aloe vera leaf. Name baking soda, certain essential oils that are going to add medicinal properties, but also scent. If you know, if you want scented stuff, essential oils, lemon extract, distilled vinegar, as well as apple cider vinegar, tea tree oil, Vaseline, you know, as a medium, and learn how to use these things to make deodorant, toothpaste, lotion, soap, lye. Matter of fact, stock up on some lye, on some Castile soap. These are bases. You want to find out what are the base ingredients for all the cosmetic products you use. Stock up on those things and learn how to make them now. That's going to decrease your dependency, and it's going to increase your long-term survivability by what? Giving you real power. Because I'm not even as in my title, but that's actually a part of the conversation. That's power. Having access to the resources and materials and know how to use the resources and materials to replace things that you were previously dependent on. That's real power. And let me make a point to that. When things hit the fan and you got $1,000, $10,000, $20,000 in cryptocurrency, but the grid is down and and you don't have access to that cryptocurrency. You don't have access to a bank account. Everything is freaking electronic right now. The grid goes down. You got $1 million in the bank. How are you going to access it? Most transactions are made online nowadays. How are you going to access it? The person who knows how to grow food, the person who knows how to make these cosmetic products, the person who knows how to distill water, filter water and make the filter, the person who knows how to provide personal security, meaning self-defense and systems in your home, those people are going to be far more valuable than your modern day millionaire. Those people are going to have power. Because if you're in my circle, you're in my community, and I don't know how to farm, I don't know how to produce food, and you do, you best believe I'm going to protect you. Because you're protecting my life by providing that service. You best believe I'm going to protect everybody. Exactly. Lies for carbon decaying animals, but even people. But even for your toilet, you know. Because if the water stops up in your house, not stops up, but like the water isn't going because people run these plants. A lot of stuff is computerized, but people run the computers. Things hit the fan tomorrow. people aren't going to work just to make sure you got flowing water to your toilet and all that kind of thing. Their priorities to their family, right? And people are still using the bathroom. You still got to use the bathroom. You have to have a way to treat that water. You have to have a way to get rid of that waste. So lye and lime and other things can be used for, you know, helping to disintegrate and to decay that waste as well. That's actually on my survival preparedness checklist that I have that's coming out soon. I have a checklist that I'm putting out. It's actually going to be a part of my ebook that I'm putting out as well. And which is my ebook is a part of my overall book. So I have a book that I'm writing with an ebook, and then survival preparedness checklists that are general and then specific lists that you might need for different things you're preparing for, depending on the region you're preparing in, right? Look out for that coming soon. Where was I at? She said lime. I was talking about cosmetics, I believe. I think I covered cosmetics, right? What else are we going to talk about? Electricity from the grid. You need to decrease your dependency on electricity from the grid. I intend on being able to use electricity if the grid goes down. I love the convenience of electricity. It makes life a whole lot easier. The reality is that most of us have experienced at some point in time what it's like to be in a blackout to some scale, whether it's for 24 hours, 2 days, a week, whatever have you. Most people have experienced a blackout. Most people have not experienced a week-long blackout. I have not experienced a week-long blackout. I've experienced more than 24 hours, close to 48 hours. And it can be uncomfortable, right? I don't want to live in a world without electricity. So you need to learn, I need to, but if you want to live in a world of electricity too, you need to learn how to harness electricity outside of the grid. It is 100% possible. We did a Savior's Day local here a few years back, maybe 4 or 5 years back, and I did a small demonstration on taking a screw, a little bit of copper wire, and a battery. Screw? What's it I used? No, it was just a magnet, one battery, a screw, and a little bit of wire, and producing an electromagnet. It's not hard at all. You can buy all that stuff for less than $10. Well, it might be less than $20. I'd say less than $20 now because batteries are expensive as hell, and a lot of things are skyrocketing in price, right? But you can do it. Now, I'm talking about something very small, but the reality is that if you can do it on a small scale, you can do it on a large scale. There are ways for you to conduct and to produce electricity or to harness. You're not producing electricity. You're harnessing electricity out of your environment. Electricity is all around you, right? But decrease your dependency on electricity from the grid, meaning learn or figure out what type of energy you're able to have in your environment. What do I mean, able to have environment? Meaning if you own a home, it's going to be different than the person that has an apartment, different than the person that's living in someone else's home or apartment, different than the person living in the shelter. If you own a home, then yeah, you might be able to rig solar panels to your own roof, unless you live in an HOA that doesn't allow that kind of thing. HOA is Homeowners Association. Hopefully you don't live in a place like that denies you that kind of thing. But even then, you have solar panels that you can literally put in your yard. You just have to array them in a way that is going to actually absorb the sunlight efficiently. But you have that ability in the house to have that space to do that. You need to figure out which type of solar generator you're going to use, which is going to be most efficient for what it is that you're going to want it for. Meaning, are you going to want it because most of the food you're storing up is frozen? You want to go to frozen food option because you think canning is too complicated, which is not. Get with Sister Colette, your sister by nature, at canningwithcolette.com, and she will get you canning in no time. That's www.canningwithcolette.com. Tap in with my sister. So you might want to have your food frozen. It might be the best option for you. So you need some kind of access to electricity. I'm telling you, if you're storing up food for survival and you're storing up mostly frozen food, the power goes out, that food is not lasting long. Typically, the type of food you freeze is not the kind of food that you're going to eat within hours. So if that's your option, something happens and the grid goes down, that frozen food is going to be gone. It's not going to last as long as dehydrated food. It's not going to last as long as canned food. Hurricanes, earthquake situation, glass jars could break. That's true, but there are ways that you can store your jars to protect them against hurricanes and earthquakes and stuff like that. So the reality is that you might want to think about having a generator to run your deep freezer, or to run your refrigerator, or to, you know, run an electric range stove, or electric heaters, lighting in your home, right? There are different reasons why you might want a generator for survival preparedness situations, but you have to figure out which one is best for you. If you own a house, it would be easier to do have a gas option, meaning propane, butane, gasoline, whatever have you option, because you might have a yard or a porch that you could put your generator on. I live in a very small apartment. I'm not running a butane, propane, or gasoline generator inside my home. I'll kill myself and my family. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't have a porch, so, you know, I can't sit it on a porch safely and then have a wire going through the window or through the porch door, screen door, something like that. I have to have an option that's different. So I have solar, and it's a completely electric generator that does not make any kind of fumes or anything. It's safer for my family. That's the option I have to go with until I have a situation where I can have the kind of gas generator. But when it comes to gas and propane, you have to think about where you're going to source this propane and this gas from. Either you're going to store up a whole bunch of it until you're able to produce natural gas, or harness a natural gas, or at least other fuel sources. If you don't have that, you have to figure that out on yourself. There are wood stoves that you can use to produce heat, meaning stoves that actually run off of burning wood. But again, that's not a good option for indoors. So knowing, I live in a house, I live in an apartment, I live in someone else's house or apartment, right? Because then you're limited in space and authority to what you can do. You're subject to somebody else's rules and an authority. So for power and electricity, transverters, having access to outside electrical sources, meaning, you know, there in most cities there's a grid. There's multiple aspects to the grid. There's the part that powers your residential homes and commercial businesses and stuff that people pay, you know, on the meter, and then there are things that powers the city. Like, for instance, in my job, you know, there's power being supplied to a generator, a backup generator we have, that if the power goes out in the city, this generator will kick in. It will run all the freezers, the super gigantic freezers and refrigerators, walk-in refrigerators at my job will run for a certain amount of time until power is restored on the grid. So you might think about having that kind of generator in your home. That's an external one that's huge, that if the power goes out, it automatically kicks in and runs your home for X amount of time. That might be the option for you. So you have to figure that out, though, family. How are you going to decrease your dependency on the electrical grid? By buying generators, solar, gas, or fuel-based generators, learning how to build a generator. That's invaluable knowledge. How do you actually build a small motor? How do you conduct electricity on any scale? Any scale, I don't care what it is, because you might not get on a small scale. Someone else might have the knowledge, engineering ability to scale that up, to do it on a bigger scale. But get that knowledge, acquire that knowledge now, before it's too late. What else can we deal with? Decrease your dependency on doctors and over-the-counter type medications. The best way that I have for you to do that is to change your diet. Start changing your diet now. Eat in a way that is going to boost your immune system and also lessen the intake of toxins that are in the food naturally and some that are added to the food unnaturally through the processes it goes through. The first one, which comes with decreasing your dependency on store-bought processed food, is going to help you in this one. Meaning, if you're growing your own food, if you're buying food out of the grocery store, produce, and you're canning it, you're processing it, you're on your own. When you can something, you're actually processing it. If you process it on your own, that process kills bacteria. You know it's in the jars because you're putting it in there. You're adding the citric acid or the salt or this vegetable, that vegetable, and you know exactly what's in that jar. Maybe you filtered the water ahead of time because there's water involved in that too, and you know that it's filtered, clean water. You cleaned the vegetables, you added the amount of citric acid or whatever else you have in there, the salt, pepper, whatever, and you made that food. That is going to increase your ability to not rely so heavily on doctors and medication. So change your diet. That's number one. That's power. You have the power to change your diet and increase your immune system, increase your physical health, and decrease the amount of toxins that are going into your body that accumulate over time and have impacts on your health. You know, decrease the amount of sweets you eat, which lessens the opportunity for you to develop illnesses like diabetes and hypertension and high blood pressure from salt and stuff like that. Decrease your intake of those things. This is going to help you decrease your dependency on medication and doctors. Learn how to treat certain types of things. Learn how to treat wounds. Learn how to somebody knowing how to sew, somebody who knows how to do a sutura. Meaning, if you know how to sew clothing proficiently, right, or to some degree, then you could you know, sew up a wound that might need to be sewn up, right? That's going to decrease your dependency on doctors. Learn how to apply a splint. Learn how to use a triangular bandage to make a sling for somebody who might have broke their arm or something like that. A splint is something that's going to keep your hand, your arm, your fingers, your toes, your leg in a fixed position, so that if you have a sprain, it keeps that joint. So this hand is the splint. It's going to keep you from being able to move in that direction. There's someone else to keep you from moving that direction. Learn how to apply a splint. Learn how to do or take what's called a blood stoppers class, which is for traumatizing wounds that causes you to lose a lot of blood, right? Take classes on that. Learn how to apply an Israeli bandage. Learning how to apply a tourniquet. Learning how to find different types of leaves and other things in your environment that work as hemostatic agents or things that will coagulate your blood and stop blood flow, so that you can save somebody's life and they don't die from blood loss. Learn how to cauterize a wound, which is an option that you don't want to have to go with, but it is an option. But you have to learn how to sterilize a wound, learn how to clean a wound, learn how to get antiseptics out of your environment. Stock up on antiseptics, stock up on gauze pads and band-aids and suture kits and all these kind of things. Get your first aid preps up, so that you and start stocking up on over-the-counter medications like Advil, Tylenol, you know, different types of things for, you know, digestive issues that you may have. I'm thinking about things that people might already deal with. If you always have headaches, what type of headache medication do you use if it's over the counter? Get a year's worth of supply of that. Get 2 years worth of supply of that kind of stuff now. Why not? If you deal with chronic headaches, if you deal with chronic pains and stuff, and you buy over-the-counter stuff for that, there's no reason why you shouldn't stock up a year's worth of more of that stuff, just in case for some reason you wouldn't be able to get it. Because you know that you have at least one headache a week, which is a lot. If you get a headache a week, that's a lot. That's chronic. And you get at least one headache a month. Really, technically, that's chronic. That's a lot. It shouldn't be that regular for you to get headaches. But if you know this is a thing, stock up on that. Decrease your dependency on hospitals. Have the people in your family trained in all these things as well, so that if something happens to you, aid can be administered to you, and you'll be able to administer aid to somebody else. Give me a minute, family.